knows something about powerful political families and the Bushes in particular. Doug Wead's newest book is called Raising of a President, the Mothers and Fathers of Our Nation's Leaders. He was also a personal assistant to both George H.W. Bush and the current president as well. Nice to see you. Thanks for being with us. How would President Bush, the current President Bush, take being called part of a political dynasty? Enjoy that term or no?
He recoils with horror, but they know what's going on. I mean, 17 years ago, I talked with George W. Bush about running for president, and John Quincy Adams, the son. So they've discussed this. And in 1990, Neil Bush had some trouble, and a member of the family said, oh, the plan was for Neil to run for governor of Colorado, Jeb to run for governor of Florida, and George to run for governor of Texas. That was 17 years ago.
You write a lot in the book, actually, about how there's anointed children in powerful political families. The Bushes are no exception to this rule?
No, this was an extraordinary trend. It's not a perfect trend, but again and again you'll find a very ambitious parent, or in the case of the Bushes, an ambitious family tradition. And there's a son on the receiving end of that who's anointed, who's supposed to succeed. And there's a third son in the shadows who looks on with a bit of sadness or envy. And again, it's the son in the shadows who becomes president of the United States. And you see it in the Eisenhowers and the Kennedys, you see it in George Washington, and you see it in the Bushes.
How much of that was a motivation for George Bush, the current president, to become as powerful? And, I mean, we heard the word vindication in the piece that I did. Do you think that's a fair word, even though he recoils in horror at that word too, apparently?
No, I think you're right on the money. When in the little pop art documentary Journeys with George, Alexandra Pelosi brings him to the front of the bus at the end of the movie, and she says to him, what about the little guy? If you're elected president of the United States, what will you do for the little guy? He says, I am the little guy. Jeb is 6'4", I'm 5'11". And I remember in 1988 when 41 was elected president, I went out to dinner with Marvin Bush, and I said, do any of you guys, any of your generation have an interest in politics? The naive me. And he says, well, we think Jeb might do something. And I said, what about George? He's the oldest in the family. And Marvin laughed at me. He said, George is the family clown. So this is the story, the boy in the shadows. It's George Washington, not Lawrence. It's Jack Kennedy, not Joe Jr.
How has 9/11 helped define his mission as president, do you think?
Well, you know, 17 years ago, when I thought of him as a potential president, I thought at the time, he's the most decisive person I ever met in my life. I thought, boy, if he ever becomes president, he will be either a tremendous president or a terrible president, or maybe both, because he's the most decisive person I had ever met. And I do believe his presidency is going to be pivotal for good or bad because of his nature.
Doug Wead, the book is called The Raising of a President. Look back at all the powerful families that have eventually made their way to the highest office in the land. Nice to have you. Thank you very much.